Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion for Monday, August 13th, 2018. The first part of this, I will go over anything that's, possibly developing or whatever, and then if you're just interested in that, you're good to go. The rest of this will be dedicated to updating you on different parameters that I look at in a more long and drawn-out process, and so I've tried to make it so that if you just want, hey, is something happening? That's all I want to know. Well, that's going to be at the front end of this. So there you go. In the Atlantic, just this one area way out in the subtropics and nothing in the main development region. Still lots of sinking air out here and dry air, and those two are kind of related, and so nothing is developing out that way. In the eastern Pacific, we do have a couple of disturbances to keep an eye on, but both of them basically don't show much promise for development over the next 5 days, 50% being the highest with this system here. And if we look at the satellite picture for the area, you can see a pretty active area of cloud cover down here, but nothing that looks imminent, and certainly nothing threatening the Baja or any of the resort areas along mainland Mexico, and nothing to bring any substantial moisture up into the desert southwest. That might happen later in September as the pattern changes, but it's not happening right now. I did want to show you the wide shot of the Atlantic real quick, just to kind of give you a visual on what's not happening. Lots and lots of dry sinking air, as I mentioned. The intertropical convergent zone, basically that is where the trades from the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere meet, and you get this upward motion and convergence. That's why that's part of the four-letter moniker of intertropical convergent zone, and it's pretty far to the south. There is a little bit of a bend in it over here associated with the monsoon trough, but really nothing getting going as we approach the mid part of August. A few popcorn areas of convection in and around Central America, but that is about it. We do have a tropical wave or some kind of a disturbance moving into the very southern portion of the Windward Islands, and I took it upon myself to find a nice high-resolution satellite shot. I wanted to show you this and zoom in on it. And let's change our color to blue here. So this is Barbados, and then kind of hidden beneath the clouds down here, you have Trinidad and Tobago. So yeah, as you are watching this from down there, you can probably tell me what the weather is doing. This is certainly a blow-up of showers and thunderstorms, probably have some gusty winds from time to time. And these deep tropical thunderstorms can produce a lot of heavy rain. So I'm kind of pointing out the obvious, but there it is down there. Whoops. And I didn't want to ignore you guys. It's not a named storm. It's not even a well-developed tropical wave, but it is a moisture surge and a moisture source moving into your area. So it's more of nowcasting than anything else. At least behind it, as we see on the wider shot, there's not too much else, but you never know when this sort of streamer of intertropical convergent zone moisture gets active, and that's aimed generally at the southern Windward Islands. Luckily, that's all that's aimed there. So tropics nice and quiet, and now we will move into, let me just show you this, the East Pacific, another animation of that. Again, these areas not that well organized. There's plenty of them. For sure, this is very active. This is where all the upward motion is right now. The rising motion of the atmosphere, very prevalent, but none of these look very poised for significant development over the next few days for whatever reason. Maybe there's just too many of them, and they're ruining their own environment. All right, let's move along to some other topics here. The updated NOAA-NESDIS sea surface temperature anomaly for today, August 13th. And as you can see, most of the Atlantic now is right around, at least the tropical Atlantic, and certainly up here in the subtropics. According to this data set, most of the numbers are over here on the right-hand side. There's no more of these deep blues out here. And different variables or different data sets are going to show different results depending on what time frame you're looking at to develop your base state. And the CDAS method is 1981 through 2010, whereas this is a shorter area of time, span of time. I'm trying to remember what it was now that I think about it. and it doesn't include the warm AMO time frame. But I've talked about this before. I mean, let's look at this as an example. There's a very strong anomaly right there off the coast of Southern California, several degrees Celsius above the long-term average. And then you go and you look and you say, oh, I've read all those headlines about the Scripps Pier out there. It's like 80 degrees or 81 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's well above the long-term average. So this verifies. Does it verify exactly? I don't know. That, it's just, I look at this and I say, all right, what is the overall look? And we can clearly see that. The Atlantic is, generally in the wheelhouse of where it's supposed to be this time of year. There's no overwhelming warm or cold relative to average, not in the deep tropics. Caribbean and parts of the Gulf a little cooler than average. But boy, up here in the northwest Atlantic, much above the long-term average. Then this really jumps out at me. The Nino 1-2 area, much below the long-term average. And now in the Nino 3 and 3.4 areas, that's starting to drop. And so this should create some changes where when you start removing the warmth out of this area, you don't have as much upward motion, and maybe the shear eventually begins to drop. This same thing happened around this time last year, where we started to develop that La Nina that came out here for several months, and we had a string of hurricanes develop. Now, the Atlantic through this area was a lot warmer this time last year, so, and I'm going to show you that in just a moment. So speaking of just, comparing, obviously this is a big change from June the 4th. See, we've definitely changed the profile. I mean, look, even in the Pacific here, this was looking like it was well on its way to the El Nino state, and the 51st state of the U.S., right? The El Nino state. Trying to make a funny there, but whatever. And you can see, quite a big change even there. It was warming up pretty prevalently, and now you've got these large pools of negative anomalies starting to show up. Moving along, I want to show you the subsurface. This too, lots of subsurface warmth way over deep down in the far western reaches of the Pacific. But over here in the East Pac, a good deal of it, with this one little island anyway in the middle. Most of the East Pacific and Central Pacific, cooler or right at average. There's no El Nino coming in August and September, period. I'm 100% certain at this point. And it's not like, wow, Mark, you're really smart. You just look at this and you can see, and you look at this and you can see, nope, not happening. And when we look at this is even more evidence that it's not happening. What is this? Well, here's your Nino regions. This is the 1-2 area. And I think these are the MJO regions, but I'm not sure. I saw this on Twitter, and this is from the Weather Models site. But your Nino areas are outlined right through here, and that's what I want to focus on. And basically, these blues are increased or enhanced trade winds. And this is where we are today, and this is the future out to August 27th. So for the next good while, spanning, all across the Nino regions, is stronger than average easterly winds. That's what this shows. So the winds are going to be blowing stronger this way instead of slowing or becoming westerly like that. That's not happening. And so there's no mechanism to drive the El Nino. At the same time, I think it's interesting, and this is from the ECMWF Ensemble Prediction System, it's showing that there'll be a pretty good burst of trades in the Atlantic. As you can see, this all spans this area. But by just a few days from now, we should see a substantial reduction in the trade winds out in the Atlantic. So we may see this warm up significantly. We'll just have to see. So interesting, this shows no El Nino, and this shows a positive signal for the Atlantic to warm. Just, makes you go, looking at the upper ocean heat content, very, very important. And this is today's date. I want to show you what it looked like last year as well. And there's not that much out here in the tropical Atlantic, that's for sure. So any of these tropical waves that try to get going, they're going to have to come out and survive until about 40 to 50 west longitude and then try to develop, because west of there, as you know, a lot of upper ocean heat content lies in wait. It's there. But if we compare to last year, this is very telling. A lot more upper ocean heat content. It wasn't necessarily that it was at the top of the scale or anything, but you can tell that the extent of it, its range, so to speak, yeah, I mean, that's a big difference between now and last year, especially out in the deep tropics. And anything that came out of Africa had a really good shot at developing, and we saw what happened. As far as this year, this is the profile here that you don't need me to tell you. You get something coming over here, you never know, and it can really intensify. Probably later in September and maybe even into October. This to me is very interesting that this says to me cooling Pacific, certainly not a warming Pacific for the next couple of weeks, warming Atlantic, etc. I mean, it could be that we go on into October for this year's hurricane. I know it's through November, for goodness sakes. That's why it goes to November 30th. And this is, it's mathematically possible that nothing else forms. What they call it, a non-zero chance. But that would, I think, be more in a super El Nino type year, and we're not even close to that. So I believe September through parts of October, it's going to be one of those seasons where everything gets crammed into that. Hey, it's the anniversary. 14 years ago, right now, I was on my way with several colleagues from the Tampa Bay area, Bradenton Beach, down to Port Charlotte, just inland over there on I-75. This is on my YouTube channel, Hurricane Charlie. 14 years ago today, the infamous intermediate advisory that was put out saying that Charlie had rapidly intensified to a strong Category 4 with a very small eye. I think it was like 8 miles in diameter or 5 miles, something like that. And it said that the Category 4 winds were located in a small area. I don't remember what quadrant of the eye, right off the top of my head. It's 14 years ago. And we were remarking to each other as I said, hey, we need to get down there and get in front of it because it's changed its course. And everybody was like, well, Mark, that's a Cat 4. You really want to do that? I'm like, yeah, but remember what they said. That's located in just a small area. What are the odds that that'll find us? And the rest is history. And I vowed never to sit in my automobile again. It was the Tahoe, in a Category 4 hurricane. Not a very smart thing to do. And it gave birth to all the remote cams that we have now and the weather stations and so forth and so on. There you go, 14 years ago today. At least there's nothing out there even remotely resembling that now. So honestly, things are going to be quiet probably for the next couple of weeks or so, outside of some rogue, something that pops up that none of the models are jumping on now. But September and October, this could be one of those seasons where, and I was looking back, 2010, which was a very busy season. It didn't really get started until September, and that's where the Atlantic was warm all over the place. So you never know what you're going to get. It's a Forrest Gump type season. You never know what you're going to get. All right, so at least it's quiet for now. The week ahead, if you've got anything related to going to the beach or going to a cruise, no worries whatsoever. Caribbean, the Bahamas, out to the islands that were hit last year from Irma to Jose to Maria. It's all looking real good. Probably the next week to 10 days, I'd bet my life on that there's nothing that's going to bother you. No hurricanes. Seriously, that's good news. They need the tourists down there. They want people to come back. They're rebuilding. They've put a lot of effort into it. So enjoy it without worrying about anything that has a name on it coming at you from the east. It isn't going to happen over the next week to 10 days. And on that good note, I'll sign off. I am Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.